Ladies and gentlemen, if I ask everybody to please take their seats. Just a gentle reminder before we begin, if everybody could please take a moment to turn their phones on silent so as not to disturb the funeral service for Mr. Levitan. Officiating our service day is Rabbi Louis Lazovsky.
Adonai mo'adam v'tedoeu, ben enosh v'tachashvehu. Adam lehevel dama yamav kitzel ovir. Zramtam shema yu, babokir kechotzer yachalov. Babokir yotzitz v'chalav alev yimolel v'yavesh. Yemesh no sena behem shivim shana, vim bigvuro shmonim shana. V'rabim amel v'aven, ki goz chish v'nufa. Limnos Yamenu Kain Hodav and Avil Avav Chachma. Shmor Tamore Yashor Ki Achrisli Shalom. Achlahim Biften Nafshim Yad Sheol Ki Kocheni Sela. But Adonai Nefesh Avadav Velo Eshmu Kalachos Imbo. Vyashov He'afor Al Horetz Ki Shehayav V'rach Tashuv El Ho'alahim Asher Nesana. O Lord, what is man that thou dost regard him, or the son of man that thou dost think of him? Man is like a breath, his days are like a passing shadow. You sweep men away. They are like a dream, like grass which is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength 80. Yet their pride is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. So teach us to number our days so that we may beget a heart of wisdom. Mark the blameless man, and behold the upright, for there is posterity for the man of peace. Surely God will ransom my soul from the grave. He will redeem me and receive me indeed. The Lord redeems the souls of his servants, and none of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. Mechtamle David, Shemerni el ki chasisi vach, amart ladnoi no ata tavosi balalecha. L'kdoshem asher bor tzema v'direi koach heftzibam, yibu atzvosam achar meharu, balosich niskeim midam, v'alesa ishmosam al sfosoi. Adonai melaschel ki v'kosi v'atosomich gorali, chavalim nafloli b'ne'imim af nachla shofra aloi. Avareches Adonai asher yatzani, haflelos yisrunech el yosoi, shivi sedno elenegdi sami kimimini bal emot, lochein samach libi baranoi, v'yogel kvodi af besori yishkon levetach. Ki los azov nafshi lishol, los iten chasidcha l'ros shachas, tudinu orchaim sos machos aspanecha nimos min chanetzach. Mismorla David, Adonai mi yagor bi'olecha mishkon bihar kodshecha, holech tamim ufel tzedek v'dover emes bilvavo, lo rogal al shono lo asol reo ra'ah, v'cher polo nasa al krovo. Niv zebeinav nimas v'yesir Adonai yachabed, yishpale hara v'lo yamir, kaspolo nasan ba'neshech v'shochad al naki lo lokach, osa ele lo yimot li'olam. Mismorla David, Adonai roi lo echzor, binostesha yarbitzeni al memenucho shenaleni, nafshi yishovei v'yancheni b'ma'agle tzedek l'ma'an shmo, gam ki elech b'geit salmoves le'rara ki atay modi, shiftecha mishantecha heme yinachamuni, ta'aroch lefonai shulcha neged zaroi, Dishanta b'shem Roshi Kosi Ravaya, Ach Tov v'chesed Yudifuni Kol Yimei Chayoi, B'shavti b'veis Adonai Liyorach Yamim. We're here this afternoon to pay final tribute to Arnold Yosef ben Reuven Halevi. He was born in Boston in 1962. His parents were Reuven and Ilana Rosenblum Levitan. His siblings were the late Daniel and Elat, and Ed and Laura Levitan. Arnie was educated here in the state of Illinois. He received his bachelor's and his master's degree in engineering, electrical engineering from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. He married his beloved Janice Anderson on July 4th, 1993. They met in a synagogue in Kokomo, Indiana. Their beloved children, Jacob and Esti, Sarah and Yosef Shalom, Hannah and Ilan, and Ari and Chani, and his beloved grandchildren, Avichai, Bacha, Roi, Avrami, and Dina. He loved his family. It was his greatest pride, his greatest joy. Arnie lived in many, many different places. He started out in Boston, and at age 6 came to Skokie, then to Kokomo, then to Austin, Texas, where his last 2 children were born, and San Antonio, then Wilmette, and then Skokie. He was employed in various capacities at Delco Electronics, at Motorola, at Sony, at Motorola again, and then that merged with Continental and Vitesco, but it was basically still Motorola. He was very involved in different synagogues, starting with B'nai Emunah here in Skokie, where he went to his Sunday school, and he began his education, and certainly Shul in Kokomo, Shul in Texas, and then, of course, Young Israel of Skokie, where he was president, and in the later days here, he was at the Skokie Kollel, where he was very proud to be a gabbai. He came to Kesser Mara first, after leaving San Antonio and moving to Wilmette upon the passing of his mother. And he did not want to miss any minyanim, and he wanted to be able to daven. And so my son, Rabbi Ben Sion, taught him Mincha Marav, Chazras Hashatz, and he was so very, very proud being able to daven, and he was giving it over when he passed away to his family. Among his many honors, he and Janet were honored from Hannah Sachs Beis Yaakov as Parents of the Year back in 2018. He loved baseball, the White Sox, the Red Sox, and he loved travel, he loved music. In terms of charities, he gave to so many different places. Certainly, he was very generous to all the day schools that his children attended, all the synagogues he was at, Chabad. He was Makabel Ponim of the Clevelander Rebbe from Renana, because his family helped found Renana in Eretz Yisrael. The Slobodki Yeshiva, where his father had helped a little girl back in Europe, and from age 5 on, and then she eventually married the Rosh Yeshiva of Slobodka, Rabbi Zaks, and they used to refer to this little girl as the Rebbitzin, and when she would hear it on the phone, the Rebbitzin is calling, the Rebbitzin would laugh, because she felt that she was more family than a Rebbitzin, and that was really one of the great attributes of Arnon, of Arnie, that he was Moroi Min Abrios, that was an emissit person. He would go to Shiva houses and he would cry because it hurt him. He shared in the pain and suffering of others. And he just treasured everybody. People who he met for a short time, strangers, they became dear friends because that was one of his unique mitos, one of his unique attributes. In addition to the charities I've already mentioned, he was a member and contributed to Religious Zionists, to the Chicago Mitzvah Campaign. They donated a Torah to Chabad of Austin, Texas, which then led to another Torah being donated. And when they moved to Skokie, they wanted their home to be a place of achnasas orchim, a place where people could always come, people could always enjoy Shabbos, and really he lived up to that with his dear wife Janice and his children. It really, his home really became a place of achnasas orchim. In terms of his many attributes, and I'll only mention a few. As I mentioned, he loved his family, his children, his grandchildren. He loved Israel deeply. He had already picked out his date for making Aliyah in less than 3 years. He's making it sooner than he thought, unfortunately. He was warm, he was loving, he was caring, he was dedicated. And none of these things that I'm saying are a surprise to anybody here who knew him and who loved him. He always tried to help people. He was very detail-oriented. There were never any in-laws, not sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, or in-laws. Everybody was family. He didn't try to bifurcate or separate people. Such a midah that Klal Yisrael is in desperate need of in these days. There's so many things that try to tear us apart. And Arnie saw through all of that, felt there was no point in it, no need for any of it. He had tremendous kavod for Rabbonim, and he was constantly growing in mitzvos. Growing closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Excuse me. He used to study the Parsha every Friday night. He used to give his children brachos. It meant so much to him and to his children. And he really started his journey with the passing of his mother, where he started to daven every day and learned how to daven. And he took off from that journey, and he was still ascending. And it was a pleasure to watch him, to speak with him, to share his joy and his excitement with Yadus. And his family, as I mentioned, helped found Ranana. And with the passing of his father, he inherited real estate there. And he didn't want to sell it. He didn't want to give it away. Instead, he said, for my children. He wanted his children to have a deep love of Eretz Yisrael, a deep connection to Eretz Yisrael. And we'll speak a little bit more about that later. We have another set of Maspidim, Mike Shuwal, who is one of his best friends since 8 years old. At this time, Mike will give some remarks.
I'll be honest, I hope I can hold it together. I'm not a public speaker, and I never will be, so forgive me if I just read this to you. Arnie and I have been friends for 54 years, since the first day of Hebrew school at B'nai Amunah. And we've remained friends ever since. It's kind of unique. It speaks a lot about Arnie's ability to tolerate people. Just the other day, Arnie invited me to join the floor hockey game at Ari Crown but he was feeling sore from the game the night before. So maybe he wanted me to share a little of that. Arnie once said, "Everybody lives in their own little world. I want mine to be the size of planet Earth. But first, it must be greater than myself." He said that when we were in college. We were roommates together at Champaign. And it was one of the most arrogant statements I'd ever heard at the time. But it was also one of his greatest quotes. I used that quote to inform Arnie that his bride, Janice, was one of the things that was greater than himself. Fortunately, he agreed. Then came Jacob, Sarah, Hannah, and Ari. And each time I reminded Arnie that these stars of light, these precious hopes for the future, his family, were greater than himself. And again, Arnie agreed. This is twice I got in the last word. Then the White Sox won the World Series, and Arnie agreed pointedly. There's something greater than himself. Arnie's love and adoration for Hashem, Jewish life, temple life, all of them greater than himself, and he agreed. But what truly convinced Arnie were the moments that he became a Saba. That's when it really came home. When the grandkids pulled on his beard or tugged at his nose or pulled his shirt or asked him to play. That's when it really came home to Arnie that there's something greater than himself. And so today, I think Arnie would be honored if we all remember that within each of us is the seed for creating something greater than ourselves. And that's all I can tell you about Arnie.
This time I'd like to call up Rabbi Shmuel Oren, the Rosh Kollel.
I think everyone is a little bit of a loss of words just to try to understand the impact that Arnie really had in the entire community, just everywhere. And I really just want to try to focus on four things. Obviously, I can sit here and I can talk for hours and hours and hours about everything because he was such an incredible person. And his love for so many people and so many things and so many other ideas were so great. But I just really want to focus on four things. And we're in the Parshas of Avram Avinu. We're talking about Avram Avinu. Last week we were talking about Avram Avinu. Vayeru was talking about Avram Avinu. This week we're talking about Avram Avinu. And we really find a fascinating pasuk. The pasuk tells us in this week's Parsha, Parshas Chayei, towards the end of Avram Avinu's life, it says, "V'Hashem berach es Avram b'kol." That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the end of his life, gave Avram Avinu a bracha. Everyone could ask, it's a funny thing. Why would the bracha come at the end of Avram Avinu's life? We know, first of all, he got a bracha in the beginning. In Parshas Lech Lecha, he already had a bracha. What happens now? Why Parshas Chayei now, towards the end of his life, all of a sudden we need another bracha for Avram Avinu? What was happening? What was going on? Why was it so important for him to give him a bracha then? The Mefarshim bring down an unbelievable idea that I think Arnie lived by. Rabbi Lazovsky mentioned it, and I'm just really here to echo his thoughts. The bracha was that in the beginning of one's life, it's very easy to get a bracha. We're idealistic, we're young, we're energetic, we're looking for more things to do, we're looking to accomplish more. A person says, I want to do the next thing, I want to move on to the next thing, I want to move on to the next thing. But sometimes as we get a little bit older, we get slow down a little bit. We stop doing things. We stop being so energetic about things. We stop having a bikush. We stop wanting to do more and more and more and more and more. But Kadosh Baruch Hu says, look at Avram Avinu. I'm going to give him a bracha now because he's still going. He's still steiging. He's still thriving. He's still growing to do more and more and more and more and more. And I can't even begin to tell you the growth that Arnie has had, and that every single day, every month, every year, there was more that he wanted to do. Rebbe Lazavsky mentioned he started davening, and he was so proud of himself that he was able to, by the yard sites, he would be able to lead Marav, he would be able to daven from the Abed and Shachras, and he would keep building himself and building himself. Just now, towards the end, starting Rosh Chodesh Elul, he was part of our shir, he was part of the Gemara shir. I'm not sure he ever had the experience of learning Gemara before in his life, but all of a sudden he got to sit and he got to, every single day I just looked back, earlier this afternoon I just looked back, and literally every single day I would send out a WhatsApp, you could see the recording, you could see who listened to the recording, and because his name is first on my phone, because he starts with an A, every single day he listened to the recording. Sometimes it was 9:30 at night, sometimes it's 11:30 at night, sometimes it was 10 o'clock at night, but clearly every single night he sat there, he learned, and he understood. Agav, I don't know, but I don't know if I should even say it, but every single night, you can look back, I guess in my phone, you can look back, and every single night, you saw that he listened to the shir, and it was come out every night. You can go back, all the way back to Rosh Chodesh Elul, and it was at night, it was at night, it was at night. The day he was nifter, he listened to the shir at 12:11 p.m. 12:11 p.m. he listened to the shir. Every other day, he listened to the shir at night, late at night, but for whatever reason, and then Hashemayim, he listened to the shir right before he passed away. But that was him, that was Arnie. He just wanted to grow. He just wanted to do more. He was mamish like Avram Avinu. That there was no such thing. There was no such thing where he was done growing, where he was done thriving and growing in his life. He was the person that no matter what situation, he was always looking to grow. The other idea, and again we know this about Avram Avinu, that he was such a Baal Chesed. Everything about him was a Baal Chesed. He just wanted to give to other people. He wanted to give to other people. When he moved close to the Kollel, he had been a couple blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. He moved almost next door. And I remember him telling me that he just wanted to be able to host people. He wanted to be able to have people. And he was one of the few people, as was mentioned, he was one of the few people that not only did he care about himself, which he did, he cared about his family greatly, but he really was of the few people that had an incredible achrayus for Klal Yisrael. He felt Klal Yisrael. Everything about Klal Yisrael, but not just on the broad way, which he did, and he was part of Sheretz HaPleita, and his love for Eretz Yisrael and his love for Klal Yisrael as a whole, but every individual person he cared for. Every person, there would be a person who would walk in for Shachris, he would have a whole conversation with him, and he would talk to him, and he really cared, and he asked him, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Where are you going? Do you need a ride? Do you need this? Do you want to know where breakfast is? Everything. He would come to my office. I daven early. I daven at the early minyan. He used to daven at the 7:30 minyan most of the time. So sometimes when I was getting things ready, I was about to leave. He would come by my office at the end of the 7:30 minyan, and he would just talk. And he was of the few people that really cared. He would sit there and he would ask, "How's it going? How are you doing?" And we'd have a conversation. And he'd always ask his last question, "Is there anything else I need to know about?" And I'd say, "No, I think we're good." And that was it, mamash to the last day. Literally Wednesday morning we talked. He has Yortzeit next Shabbos and all the different stuff. And literally on the last day, on Wednesday, he came in and he asked me and he told me, I have to sponsor Kiddush next Shabbos because I have Yortzeit and December 13th. And he was telling me everything that was going on. And he really cared, and he cared about every individual, he cared about every person, he cared about every member of Klal Yisrael. Just like Avraham Avinu, he had this huge heart of somebody who just cared so much about people. He was just this incredible person, Adam Gadol and Chassan. Third thing I really want to mention about him is that everything that happened, he recognized the Yad Hashem. He would constantly be telling me stories. As was mentioned, he traveled fairly consistently. Not all the time, but fairly consistently he traveled. Oftentimes he would be in Eretz Yisrael, of course. He'd be in Europe a lot. He'd be in Germany. He'd be here. He'd be there. He was always traveling. Not always, but again, somewhat consistently he would travel. And when he would travel, he'd always come back and he'd always have the story. And each one, he would start describing the Yad Hashem in the story. I had to get to this minyan, I had to be at this place, I had to be over here. And it was unbelievable. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu set me up in this situation, and he would always go back to the story when he was by the Kotel and he was davening Marav, and he really had these incredible stories. But you felt that he was with HaKadosh Baruch Hu all the time, just like Avraham Avinu was Konei Shemayim V'Aretz HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he felt the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu all the time. That was Arnie. He always told you the stories, and he always told you everything that was happening, and everything, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu worked everything out, and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu was taking care of him and taking care of his family. And he always was able to make sure to be clear that he didn't think that this was anything to do with him. This was clear that everything was because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu working out everything. And really the last thing I want to mention, he stood for a lot. And there's no question that he has suggestions. He'd come to me and he'd have suggestions, and he'd say, I think we should do this, and I think we should do that. And we would talk about it and we would discuss it. But one of the most amazing things about him wasn't that he has suggestions. Everybody has suggestions. If a shul had a suggestion box, it would be full every single time. It would be full every day, more than the pushki. You'd have to take it out and you'd have all sorts of suggestions in the shul. What was amazing about him was, besides the suggestions, he was always makabel. Whenever I'd say, I don't know if we're going to do this, I hear it's a good idea, let me think about it, he would be makabel. He wouldn't keep fighting. He knew exactly when to express his point, when to tell me, when to give his suggestions. But when I would say, for whatever reason, I'd say, I don't know if that we can do that, I don't know if that makes sense, he'd say, okay, I'm just suggesting it, and that's it. He would walk away. Oftentimes people get so enamored with their own ideas that they can't hear any other side. They can't understand. They're not able to be makabel from someone else. But that was him. He was so amazing, and he cared so much about everybody. He cared so much about Klal Yisrael, and he really just loved everybody. I just want to mention, and I know this, I'm already going on, and I just want to say one thing, and this isn't just one thing. He had an incredible love, besides for Eretz Yisrael, besides for his family, an incredible love for Tachran, He loved Tachran. Most of Klal Yisrael is jumping for joy when we miss Tachran. We're always looking for excuses to get out of Tachran. Not Arnie. He would always talk about how Tachran what accepts the way our tefillos work are through Tachran. He's 100% right. There's a lot to take out of his life. There's a lot for us to sit about and think about in his life, and how we can all be better people from his life. But I think if there's one thing we could take from him, one thing that's maybe not somewhat run of the mill from everyone else, I think each one of us can maybe stop ourselves during tefillah, or during Shiva, during Shloshim, for the next year, for however long we can, and maybe have a little extra kavanah and tachnon. Maybe think about what the tefillah means. Think about what the tefillah does, and hopefully that will be an incredible Ilui Nishmas. And hopefully through his life, through everything we learn, it will be an incredible Ilui Nishmas. So bila amavos lenetzach u'macha Hashem dima me'al kol panim. You have safe.
When finding words to give a kavod achron to my father-in-law, I think it's difficult to put to words Arnold Yosef ben Reuven Levi. And I'm not going to be Mosif anything new that we haven't heard. And I think someone so personable, and everyone here in some way has their own connection, of certainly his family, his friends, his community. I could speak from my perspective that I was zocha to be a husband to his daughter Sarah. I think what I want to summarize is, as we've heard, my father-in-law lived a life of ava, of love, in two areas. Again, not surprising. Love for his family, and love for Yiddishkeit, for Torah, mitzvahs, and avodas Hashem. And starting with the love for his family, meeting my mother-in-law, if you will. We're working as an electrical engineer in Kokomo, Indiana. The stories he's told so vivid, so detailed, so he was almost reliving the feelings. Just all these experiences he's had. He'd share over of how his family has come together, meeting his wife, having his children. Then the not so easy times, the moves, from one place to another. The common denominator is these experiences. He wanted the best for his family, the best for his Eishes Klal, for his children, and it just that was very clear to me, and I think anyone that heard these stories. And the love for his family, Shabbos, a highlight of Shabbos, brachas to his children, brachas to his children-in-law, and brachas Erev Shabbos if we were away, or over the phone. And he took pride. I remember by when I got married and his children, that making it to each Sheva brachas, all seven, or all each day of Sheva brachas, everyone. I remember when we got married, we in Minneapolis, came up to Minneapolis. When other children got married, he was there. And it was certainly, he wanted to be there. And just seeing how much his feeling, his how much love he had being involved with his children and their lives and what they do, and then their subsequent families. My wife told me a story when her family moved back to Chicago from Texas. It was a big deal changing schools, and one school closed down, so it was unclear what was going to happen. And one kid was fine. One kid, their school closed. What grade were they going to go into? What was going to happen to the other children? So hearing about Eric Crown Hebrew Day School, he made a point to meet with the Menal, Rabbi Samber, to discuss how having my wife begin first grade, second grade in the school. And the story is, how did the meeting proceed? My father-in-law comes and meets with the Menal, with Rabbi Samber, and proceeds to sob, and just exclaiming that all he wanted was to have a Jewish education for his children, and that's whatever it would take. And then, as we've said, this love for his family, his children, went over to Zainakach, to the grandchildren, and seeing just, baby time, and how much that meant to him, and just all this, his family was always the top of his mind. It was very clear to me that that's how he lived his life. And then we have love for Yiddishkeit, really building on that. Love for Torah, love for mitzvahs, love for Eretz Yisrael. And what stood out the most to me about his feeling towards Torah and mitzvahs is he felt novelty out of Shabbos. He was something Halavai, he every week he would go to the bathroom to set up a little device to keep the hot water from turning on Shabbos. Thinks of these things, and his list of combinations for shuls and minyanim all across the country, all across the world. He was so proud to. You need a minyan in Portland, Oregon. Here you go. Here's how to get into the shul, and he loved the his kehilos that he's been a part of, Chabad in the early days, Young Israel, and the Skokie Kollel. And he getting involved as Gabbai and his and just so much enjoyment out of his everyday being a part of a community. It really stood out, his commitment, and and it came from, he was very proud of his family history in Renana and Slobodka, and it's Revis and Zach's, and in just going shirim and asking shilas, and being these halachic questions that I certainly would never have thought of, and he's asking me, and then getting Rabbi Oren to give a shir on it Shabbos morning. It was Alavai to have so much enjoyment out of just what can be just straightforward things, Shabbos and davening and going to shul and being part of a shul. I just want to end with a thought. We say in davening, speaking about Avram Avinu, the Parsha Shavua, Atahu Hashem Elokim Asher Becharta Be'Avram V'Yitzeiso Me'or Kastim V'Samata Shemai Avram U'Matzasa Es Levavo Neman Lefanecha. We see in davening Avram Avinu being called a Neman, someone that's steadfast, someone that's committed, someone that's rooted in their ways. And on this, there's a Gemara in Bava Basra that says, the Satan is speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel, Master of the universe. I have gone throughout the whole world, and I've not found anyone as much as a Neman, as faithful as your servant Avram. To who you said, by Lech Lecha, go and walk through the land from the one way to another way, and I'll give it to you. It'll be yours. Continues the Gemara. And despite this, even when it came time to bury Sarah Imenu in Parshas Chayei, this week's Parsha, and even when he didn't find a place to bury Sarah, before he had to go through the whole Masa v'Matan, the whole transaction for Maris Machpel for 400 silver shekels, Avram did not find fault. He was not herhor from the ways, from your ways, from Hashem's ways, and he did not complain about the fact that seemingly Hashem was over his promise to give the land to Avram Avinu because he had to buy it. So I think his whole life is being about steadfast, about being what's the goal? What am I doing this for? And I think for us, in this, with no words, that's when Emunah, that's when we have to live Emunah. And learning from the ways of Avram Avinu to be steadfast when things don't make sense, when we can't understand, that's to be mechazik ourselves in nemanas and being committed to our way of life of serving Hashem. So I want to ask Mechila if I didn't conduct myself with proper respect. There should be nechama for his Eisheshchel, for my mother-in-law, for his family, for his children. And should be a Melech Yasher for his family, his community, for Klal Yisrael, for anyone that needs Yeshua. Bilam Avos L'Netzach V'Machar Hashem Dama Milal Kovanim.
Arnie was a good guy. I don't say that in any demeaning fashion. You don't find people that are like Arnie in the world. Everything to him was Tamid Yubenecha Kachadashos. He had when he looked at things, when he saw things, whether it was a mitzvah, it was always something new. It was always something special. And I know when we talk about children, when they leave school, they could be A+ when they're in school, but then when they leave school, that's when the real test begins. And I think it's important for each and every one of us to realize, and I mean to bring into fruition, how Arnie lived his life. I think it'll be a great testimony and testament to how he lived his life. Now, in this coming week, Sedra of Chayei Sarah, there were 3 things that I'd like to mention that we all know about, but I think each and every one of them was reflection of Arnie and how he lived his life. First, of course, the Seder of Chayei Sarah begins with the burial of Sarah Imenu. When he learned about the death of Sarah Imenu, he immediately set out to purchase a grave from B'nai Ches. Transaction was complicated, but it was concluded appropriately according to Jewish requirements. The idea of Kvoras Yisrael, that a person has to be buried in a grave that belongs to you. They offered him a free grave. And Avram said, no, thank you. Not interested. They said, Nasim Elakim Ata B'Sochenu. You're a prince of God, B'Sochenu, among us. And Avram thanked him, but he was very clear and very resolute. I live with you, ger v'soshav. I'm a ger and I'm a toshav. I live among you. Jewish people have obligations in politics and economics and the environment. When it comes to religion, I'm not part of you. And so therefore, I can't bury my wife among you. It has to be something separate. And after Ephron gave him the land, then after the Kfura, he went back to the Bnei Ches and he demanded permanent easement rights, that no one will ever take this land away from us. And the reason was because with the acquisition of the burial place for Sarah, Klal Yisrael were acquiring all of Eretz Yisrael. You can ask, he spent 40,000 shekel. Remember in the Shir of Rav Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzaddik V'Kosher Livracha, Zchuto Yigin Leinu, mentioned, this is in the very early 70s, that in that time was worth about $2.5 million for burial place. He said, if they were offering it for free, why did Avram spend so much money? Could have done so much chesed with that. And the Rosh Hashanah answered, because Avram Avinu wasn't concerned with just having physical title to the land. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in giving the land to Avram Avinu wanted his children to have spiritual title in Eretz Yisrael. And that's certainly something that Arnold had. He had spiritual title in Eretz Yisrael. Realized that if we don't dwell in Eretz Yisrael, if we don't stake out a place in Eretz Yisrael, it won't be ours. And that's something that he lived for, and it's something we should all emulate. Second thing was, in the Sedra, was searching out a wife for Yitzchak. And when Eliezer Damascus went, and he prayed and seemed to have a very strange set of requirements. And the Beis Halevi mentions that it wasn't so strange, that everything that Eliezer Damascus was saying had a reason and a purpose. And he fulfilled his mission so well that they say that he was one of the people that was taken up to Shamayim without ever dying. That's how well Eliezer performed his mission. Now, what was it that he said? He said, I'm going to find a woman, she'll come out, she'll offer me a drink, and then she'll offer my animals a drink, and et cetera, et cetera. We know the story. And the question is, in the midst of Hachnosas Orchim, it's pretty easy to bring over friends that you know, that are cordial, that are dignified. But here, Eliezer Damascus was acting rude. He was acting in an uncouth manner. Pour the water in my mouth. Okay, she did. And then he wanted to see what she'd do with the water. Because if she brought it home, she wouldn't be acting with wisdom after all. Eliezer may be sick. Maybe she would be transferring contagion to her family. So then, if she poured the water on the ground, that would be insulting because she suspected him of being ill. So if she didn't pour it on the ground, he said, I'll feed your camels too. I'll give water to your camels. You know how much camel drinks? We're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gallons for a 3-year-old. But yet, she did that. And then Eliezer Damascus said, you have a place for us? Without asking your family, sure, we have a place for you. Come on, makom alone. Come. So we see that this mitzvah of Hachnosas Orchim, it's another thing that Arnold with his Eishes Chayil lived up to. So I moved to this home in Skokie, Bedafka for that reason, specifically to invite people to the home. And then finally, the rendezvous of Rivka with Yitzchak. She was riding on the camel. It says, "V'tipol be'al gamel." She saw this awesome-looking man. Here, she was 3 years old. She sees this awesome-looking man praying in the fields. He could have prayed in a tent, but he didn't pray in a tent. He prayed outside for others to see how he prayed. And this is the same thing with Arnold. Prayer. How important prayer was to him. How it lifted him up. How it changed everything. And this is something, of course, that his journey started with prayer. And it continued his whole life. So these things that, this reason that this Shabbos, the coming Shabbos of Chai Sarah, was a reason that he passed away on this Shabbos, because all three of the themes of Chai Sarah were where Arnold was a spiritual pathfinder. He was able to show us in the mitzvah of loving Eretz Yisrael and Kavor in Eretz Yisrael, in the mitzvah of Hachanasas Orchim, and finally in the mitzvah of davening, of prayer. He showed each and every one of us the importance of those elements in our life and how they can change us and how they can change everyone around us. May we, please God, be able to emulate these sterling midos of this sterling individual. And as a result, may we be all zoche to go to Eretz Yisrael, to live in Eretz Yisrael, to be one with Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. Until that time, that be a mavat l'netzach mocha Hashem dimim yalkal ponim. Just going to say one more kapitel of Tillim, and then Kel Meli Rachamim. First kapitel of Tillim. Ashrei ho'ish asher lo halach batas v'shoyim b'derech ha'toim lo lamad v'moshev leitzim lo yashav kim b'toras adonai chafotzo v'saraso yege yomam v'layla v'hyal ke'eit shasul al pal gemoim asher piri yitain be'ito v'leo lo yibol v'chol asher ya'aseh yatzliach lo chen harashoyim kim kamotz asher titfen ruach al ken lo yakum risham b'mishpat v'chatoim ba'adas tzadikim ki yodei Adonai derech tzadikim v'derech rishaim toved enosh kechatzu yamav ketzitz hasadeh ken yotzitz ki ruach avra bo v'einenu v'lo yekirenu od makomo v'chesed Adonai mi'olam v'yad olam lo yireyav v'tzidkasov nevonim lu chachmu yaskilu zos yovinu lacharisam ki lo v'moso yikach hakol lo yeredach rav kvodo shmor tamurei ashor ki yacharis li shalom Pod Adonai nefesh avodav lo yashmu kol chosim bo my korchascho elhem u'bnei adam b'tzel kanafecha yachsayun yivun mideshen beisecho v'nachal adonecha tashkeb yavo shalom yanucha mishkavosam holech nechocho. Again, we ask Mechila from Arnon, Yosef ben Reuven Halevi, if we've wronged him in any way, if we've not respected him in any way. And again, this was mentioned by the family. It should be a good to better for his family and for all of Klal Yisrael. Please rise for Kalmali. El Merachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamtzei Menuchan Nechona Tachas Kanfei Ashchina V'ma'alos Kedoshim Metorim Kezohar Akira Mesiris Nishmas Arnon Yosef ben Reuven Halevi Shalach Li'olamo Bavur Shemishpachto V'krovov Nodvim Litztok Abed Askaras Nishmaso V'gadein Temenuchaso Lochein Bal Rachamim Yastir B'seis Chpav L'yolamim Bitror Chames Nishmaso Adonai Yonachalaso Yanu Shalom Yishkavo V'nomar Amen. O God, full of compassion, Thou who dwells on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of your presence. Among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, and to the soul of Arnold Yosef ben Reuven Alevi, Arnold Joseph Levitan, who has gone into eternity and whose memory charity is offered by the family, friends, and relatives. May his repose be in paradise. May the Lord of mercy bring him under the cover of his wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. May the Lord be his possession, and may his repose be peace. Amen.
Friends, this ends our Levaya here at the chapel. Monday, Bezras Hashem, will be the Kfura in Eretz Yisrael. Please look at the funeral home website for the Shiva times and the exact time for the Kfura. This time I'm going to ask everyone to please stay standing as we escort the casket from the chapel. Thank you.